Hi, and welcome to the True Mouse Games YouTube channel. Yes, we do have a new camera. Welcome to another episode of GM Musings. In this very episode, we will be talking about Gamemaster metagaming. Now, metagaming is a term that gets thrown around a lot, mostly used by game masters to describe something that their players have done and that they are usually not particularly happy about. This is not a video about that. It is specifically a video about how the game master might be using metagaming and why he also should try to avoid it. A lot of people would say that metagaming is really everything a game master is about, right? He has all the information, he accesses all the characters, and he can use the information however he wants. I say no. As a game master, you should also try to avoid metagaming whenever you can. Because if your players catch you doing it, they could very well feel cheated, and they are not completely wrong. Let's define metagaming, the term itself, first. Metagaming in the role-playing world is taking out of character actions that make use of a knowledge that the character does not have, but the player does. Now, this specific definition is more geared towards player characters and player metagaming, but as I said before, the game master can very well metagame, and I'll give you a couple of examples to show you how the game master might metagame and when and how to avoid it. The very basic and probably easiest to spot way when the game master metagames is when an enemy, a monster, an NPC is doing things that do not make sense by using information in combat or in any type of conflict really that it should not have, or acting in a way that it should not be able to based on its information, its knowledge, and its intelligence. Very simple example. We have a party fighting some sort of large beast, say a giant wolf or something like that. This wolf, he would not know that the rogue of the group deals the most damage, and he would need to go after the rogue to make the fight specifically challenging for the player characters. That's not the wolf's knowledge. That's the game master's meta knowledge that he might be tempted to use to have the wolf go after the rogue. Another example, a large, dumb, brute type of monster, a hill giant, ogre or something, carrying a large rock. He sees the party approaching, and he chucks the rock at the wizard, because the game master knows that the wizard is the most dangerous to this creature, might be able to subjugate it with magic or some such, because the creature is very weak of will. And thus, it throws its strongest attack against the wizard. No. That is not something you should do, even though it might become tempting. Why? I'll tell you about that a bit later. A second example of GM metagaming, and something that most game masters actually do, that's not always bad, and that a lot of people probably be surprised that it's on the list at all, is balancing encounters. What do I mean by that? Well, you as the game master, of course, have meta knowledge about what your party consists of. Say, for instance, you have a party with a very strong, tanky front line of characters and a bunch of damage dealers in the back. So you design an encounter with a teleporting or very fast-moving enemy that can skip the front line, get to the back line, and stab them and kill them. Or you have a flying foe, using that against your party that doesn't have very strong ranged weapons but destroys everything in melee. Encounter balance is not generally something I particularly worry about. But if it makes sense that this flying monster is there, if it makes sense that the enemy that your party's been fighting for the last couple of adventures would have a teleporting assassin amongst them, sure, go for it, why not? But still, try to keep your encounters logical. Don't just introduce random stuff for the sake of challenging the party. Not every encounter has to be challenging. On the other hand, not every encounter has to be beatable. I always tell my players the world is a realistic place. If you know there's a dangerous area, you go in there. Don't expect to be able to beat the monsters. Or, I mean, maybe you can beat them, but by no means expect me to provide you with an adequate challenge. It could be weak, could be challenging for you guys, or it could be way stronger. The world decides that, not I as the Game Master as such. The third way for a Game Master to metagame is adapting your world and your enemies to your player characters or your players' plans that you have heard because you're sitting at the table with them. So for instance, say the players are attacking a fortress and they have the great idea to recruit local dwarves, have the local dwarves dig a tunnel underneath the fortress, and then have the wall collapse because of the tunnel. So undermine the walls, basically. Now you weren't prepared for that, and you have no idea how to stop it. So you pull out some sort of magical device that stops the wall from collapsing, or maybe a magical device that stops the dwarves from digging, making the ground supernaturally hard or something like that. You adapted your world, you adapted the challenge without it making too much sense to a plan that your player characters came up with, because you want them to have a challenging fight. It should be tough to take this fortress. No, it should not be tough. Give them an easy victory if your player characters earn it. If they come up with a good plan, and you still decide to make the fight hard for them, that's railroading, and honestly, I personally consider that cheating on a Game Master's part. Another example of this is in an investigative scenario, the player characters figure out very soon that there's a weird guy and they focus on him and they're pretty sure that he's the villain. And they are right, of course, but it makes the scenario much more difficult for you to run if they already have a strong suspicion from the beginning. So now, you as the Game Master, behind the scene, you change the identity of the villain. That guy now is just a red herring that they are focused on, and this guy is the actual villain. So you change the scenario because your player characters were doing their job, were being good players, and being capable. No, don't do that. Once again, if they figure things out beforehand, if they come up with a good plan, give them an easy victory. There's nothing wrong with that. They will feel great about their plan, and if they're being clever, they should feel good about that. The fourth way of GMing metagaming is forcing your players to metagame themselves by bringing in stuff from outside the game. Stuff that their characters would not know, but the players know. For instance, if you have a riddle or some sort of problem where your players need to use player knowledge, not character knowledge, to solve it. For instance, some sort of modern knowledge that a sort of medieval-ish society would not have. Another example, if you're running some sort of non-homebrew game, say in an established universe, say the Lord of the Rings universe, and you throw a Nazgul, a Ringwraith, a very powerful opponent, at your low-level party, you expect them to run away because your players, they have seen Lord of the Rings, maybe they read the books, they know what a Nazgul is, they know it will slaughter them and they can't really hurt it much, if at all, so they should be running. But your players instead decide that their characters will charge the creature and be brave, and they're all killed, and now they're all super frustrated, and they're like, what did you expect us to do? And you say, well, I expected you to run away, it was a Nazgul for fuck's sake, don't you know what that is? And they'll tell you, very rightly, we know, but our characters don't. And they're in the right. The fifth way of GM metagaming is something I would like to call the super consciousness. And that, of course, is you as the Game Master. You're all the NPCs. So this super consciousness is you. All the NPCs share the same information, share the same knowledge, because you're all the NPCs and you're just one person. However, resist the temptation and make sure that you don't give an NPC information that another NPC has, but this NPC shouldn't have, especially if that information is detrimental to the group, like the knowledge of some sort of weakness that one or more of your player characters might have. Be aware who knows what in your world, and unless you have a logical way for the two NPCs and the logical reason why they should communicate and share this knowledge, don't do it. And now the sixth and final part, something that I feel like I really shouldn't need to be mentioning, but I've seen too many horror stories online. I've heard too many horror stories of groups breaking apart because of this. So I will have to mention it. And that's when the Game Master brings his own personal relationships outside of the game with some of the players to the table and lets it affect his Game Master. Don't do that, you dick. That's an asshat move. A very simple example. You're a Game Master, your girlfriend or boyfriend is in the group. You want them to like you. You treat them better than the other player characters. You make things easier for them. Opposite example. You've had a fight with one of the players about a couple days ago and you're still kind of angry. And now you're taking it out on his character. You're destroying him, you're taking away all his equipment. Maybe you'll maim him or weaken him permanently in some way. That's a really dick move, and that will, or at least can, actually destroy your whole gaming group. So that's probably the worst way to metagame as a Game Master. Now I've told you the different ways a Game Master can metagame in, but I haven't really told you why you shouldn't be metagaming. So listen up. As a Game Master, it is my highest goal and the goal of many other Game Masters I know to have a believable, real, living and breathing world. Using words like verisimilitude and suspension of disbelief. A world that draws your players in. A world where they can actually believe that it is real, to an extent, of course. And every single instance of metagaming you do as the Game Master, unless it is logically explainable, unless it is following in-world logic that you have already established, every single instance of metagaming as a Game Master will destroy this verisimilitude, chip away at the suspension of disbelief that your players might be able to give you, or eventually not. Players might not notice when you metagame, but if they do, they will feel cheated, and they're right, you are cheating. It's not a nice thing to do in general. But even if the players don't notice, you, as the Game Master, will know what you have done. Now you'd say, why does that matter? Well, it does matter, because you as the Game Master should have a strong sense of the rules of your world, and every time you metagame, you weaken those rules. You weaken them in your own mind. And that's a slippery slope. You can easily lose control of that, and you can easily destroy the verisimilitude of your world and the suspension of disbelief that your players are trying to build up. If you're metagaming, always ask, why is this happening? And don't give an out-of-game explanation, because I want to balance this encounter so it's this player character can't deal quite as much damage, so the encounter is challenging, because I need to tax the player character's resources to prepare them for the boss fight. That's not a viable explanation. Why, in world logic, why is this happening? Why does this monster know that the mage is the one that should be focusing? If you can explain this to yourself, that is, that's good. In that case, the metagaming is not nearly as bad. In fact, can even be profitable for you and the group. Even better if you can reveal to your player characters and to your players, if they notice this metagaming, why it has happened. Maybe they overhear a conversation between NPCs. Maybe they realize this giant has fought against wizards before and they've been wearing the same robes like your party wizard is wearing. And now he knows that these weirdly dressed tiny people are actually very powerful and need to be killed very quickly. If you find a way to show this to your player characters and to show this to you as the Game Master, to explain the why, then metagaming isn't really metagaming anymore. In fact, it will provide you with a deeper understanding of your world, and it might provide your players with a deeper understanding of your world, therefore strengthening verisimilitude and the suspension of disbelief. And that is what you are after. Now let me know in the comments below the video whether you have some stories about GM metagaming. Were you a game master and you metagamed? Maybe your player characters realized? Maybe they didn't? How'd that go for you? Or were you a player and you realized that your game master was doing metagaming? And as always, if you liked our content, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. And we will be giving out more GM musings in the future, now with a high definition or better webcam anyway. And we'll be doing many games and reviews and all these sorts of stuff. Until we see each other again, good luck with your own games. And bye bye. True Mouse Games is signing off.